اللهم صل على محمد طب القلوب ودوائها وعافية الأجساد وشفائها ونور الأبصار وجلائها وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم.
بسم الله أوله وآخره. We have some unfinished business from session 2. It was not possible for me to put all the components together in an hour and a half. So without your permission, I decided to take out a certain part of it and relocate it into session 3. And I hope that you would approve of my decision. We ended with that verse from Surah Al-A'raf, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وإذ تأذن ربك ليبعثن عليهم إلى يوم القيامة من يسومهم سوء العذاب. And your Lord God has declared that He will now raise, ba'atha, send against them, Banu Israel in particular, those who will inflict upon them until the last day the worst possible punishment. Su' al-azab. Who are they who are now going to be raised? And when we have understood who are those who are going to be raised, we will understand the reality of the world today. We'll be able to anticipate events that are going to come tomorrow, and we'll then be able to deal with guidance and strategy. The Prophet ﷺ came upon companions of his who were sitting talking amongst themselves. And he asked, what are you talking about? And they said, we are talking about the signs of Akhiru Zaman, the Sa'ah. And then he replied in an answer which is located in Sahih Muslim, that the last hour will not come until, and he mentioned 10 signs. And if I had you as my class, then I could say no dinner for you until you memorize all 10. So you got in the way. These 10 signs have not been given to us in the chronological sequence in which they will occur. No. So not because I mentioned Dajjal first, does it mean that this is the first to occur. The 10 signs are, number 1, Al-Masih al-Dajjal. Al-Masih is Nabi Isa alayhi salam. Al-Masih al-Dajjal is the false Messiah, the one who will seek to impersonate the true Messiah. The Christians call him the Antichrist. Number 2, Gog and Magog, or Ya'jooj and Ma'gooj. Number 3, which is the sign of all signs, the mother of all signs. Number 3, the return of the son of Mary. Number 4, dukhan, or smoke. Number 5, dabbatul ard, beast or a creature of the ard. Ard means the material universe. Ard means the earth. Ard means the land. Al-Ardul Muqaddasa, the Holy Land. So Dabbatul Ard could be a beast or a creature of the material universe, a beast or a creature of the earth, a beast or a creature confined to the Holy Land, located or tied with the Holy Land. You make your choice. But when the Quran speaks about the beast, it says, and again we have another problem here with punctuation. The punctuation did not come with Jibreel alayhi salam. So in nearly every single copy of the Quran that you put your hands on, you see tukallimuhum, tukallimuhum, that the beast will speak to them. Whereas if we change the i'rab, it will become taklimuhum, will wound them. A beast will wound people. The context is clearly in favor of the second reading rather than the first. Number 6, that the sun would rise from the west. In the Quran, Ibrahim alayhi salam is having a confrontation with a ruler. And the ruler says, "Why should I worship your Lord?" And Ibrahim alayhi salam says, "My Lord gives life and takes life." So the ruler said, "But so do I. So do I." Meaning, I can give the order and your life will be taken. And I can spare you. So I can give life and I can take life. To which Ibrahim alayhi salam responded and he said, "Well, my Lord causes the sun to rise from the east. Why don't you cause it to rise from the west?" My Lord causes the sun to rise from the east. If you are truthful, why don't you cause it to rise from the west? So the true sunrise is a sunrise from the east, and a false sunrise would be a sunrise from the west. But Allah also says in the Quran, "La tabdila li khalqillah," that there is no change in Allah's creation. And so we get the scientific principle of the uniformity of nature. Hadith says that the sun will rise from the west. And now we are inundated. The emails keep coming regularly about some gravitational change in the polar structure of the world, and scientific terms Imran Hussein doesn't understand. And they've been coming after me, struggling and struggling and struggling. I don't know who is paying them to do it, to convince me that the sun is actually going to rise from the west, literally. And that's what the hadith says, it's going to rise from the west, literally. And my response is, if that's your belief, well, so be it. I'm afraid I don't agree with you. Would you kindly allow me to hold on to the Quran? The Quran tells me, and my eyes also tell me, that the sun rises from the east. And the Quran tells me that Allah's creation does not change. No. Except that there will come a day when this entire material universe is going to be subjected to something called tabdeel. And it will be transformed into something which will be غَيْرَ الْأَرْضِ وَالسَّمَوَاتِ. So I'm not talking about that event, when the earth is going to pitch out of its bosom all of its burdens, and the earth is going to speak on that day. We're talking about previous to that event. The sun is going to rise from the east in accordance with the Quran, not from the west. And so I understand it to be symbolic language, not to be literally understood. But you don't have to accept my view. No. However, it'll be so nice of you if you respect me. Respect me to allow me to hold the view I want to hold, and don't push it down my throat. I don't do that to you, do I? So you don't do it to me. So number 6, that the sun would rise from the west. And I understand that to be that the world is going to experience what is in fact a false sunrise. A new world order coming into being, which will be exactly opposite to the one that Allah created. Exactly opposite in everything to what Allah has ordained. And I say that world has already come into being. Yes. It's modern Western civilization, which today has taken control of the world. But you don't have to accept my view, and let's not argue over it. Number 7, 8, and 9. 3 khusuf, plural of khas. 3 earthquakes. But these are not just earthquakes. These are movements of the earth which will cause a sinking of the earth. And the earth will swallow what it swallows. One in the east, one in the west, and the third one in Arabia. And number 10, that a fire will come out of Yemen. We have anyone from Yemen? No one from Yemen? Okay. A fire will come out of Yemen and will drive people to their place of assembly, of hashar, for judgment. These are the 10 known as the major signs. And in these 10 major signs you find major actors of Akhiru Zaman and major events of Akhiru Zaman. We want to focus now for a while on Gog and Magog. Why? وَحَرَامٌ عَلَى قَرْيَةٍ أَهْلَكْنَاهَا أَنَّهُمْ لَا يَرْجِعُونَ حَتَّى إِذَا فُتِحَتْ يَأْجُوجُ وَمَأْجُوجُ وَهُمْ مِنْ كُلِّ حَدَبٍ يَنْسِلُونَ Come on somebody, help me. Anbiya, Suratul Anbiya, Surah number 21. Allah speaks of a town which He has destroyed. The people of the town have been exiled, sent out, and He's placed a ban on them. They could never return to reclaim that town as their own until Gog and Magog have been released. Futihat, open. And they spread out in all directions, or they come down from every height. Using our methodology, and this is the book in which I have done it, the Islamic view of Gog and Magog in the modern world, and my wife has just informed me that we're running out of some copies, but never mind, give your name, and we'll try to get the books to you, inshallah, if we run out of copies. When Gog and Magog are released, and they descend from every height or they spread out in all directions, then you'll find these people returning to this town to reclaim it as their own. And using our methodology, we came to the conclusion that the town is Jerusalem. And therefore, when you see Banu Israel being brought back to the Holy Land to reclaim it as their own, which they have done today, then there must be an explanation for that. And this is our explanation. The Quran says about itself in Surah An-Nahl, Surah number 16, it says, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ونزلنا عليك الكتاب تبيانا لكل شيء وهدى ورحمة وبشرى للمسلمين. And we have sent down this book, the Quran, with an explanation in it for all things. تبيانا لكل شيء. This is a book which explains all things. It doesn't tell you how to fry fish, because you don't need that guidance from Allah. But all those things wherein you need guidance from Allah, Allah provides the answers. Banu Israel were driven out of the Holy Land 2,000 years ago or more. And for 2,000 years they lived in exile. Today, after 2,000 years, they have returned to the Holy Land and reclaimed it as their own. And today I ask, as I have asked again and again the scholars of Islam, I even mention, I don't normally call people by their names, but I even mention the name of Dr. Yusuf Qaradawi in a public lecture to send a message. Please, is this happening by accident? Is it by accident that they have returned to the Holy Land after 2,000 years to reclaim the Holy Land as their own? Is it by accident that they have restored a state of Israel in the Holy Land? Are these things happening by accident? Or is there an explanation? And if there is an explanation, tell us what it is. But they won't answer me. They won't answer me. The scholars of Islam will not answer me. No. I say there is an explanation. And the explanation is in the Quran. The town is Jerusalem. And so when you see Banu Israel being brought back to the Holy Land, it is these two ayat of Surah Al-Anbiya which explain that it is Gog and Magog who have brought them back. And so Gog and Magog control power in the world. This is my explanation that I have found in the Quran. What is yours? No matter what I do, no matter how softly I speak, no matter how loudly I shout, they will not answer me. This is the world of Islamic scholarship today. It's a pity they will not answer me. But time is running out for them. Events are unfolding. And so now we turn to the study of Gog and Magog. And we don't have time today to do an exhaustive study, but we turn to Surah Al-Kahf of the Quran. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنْ ذِي الْقَرْنَيْنِ قُلْ سَأَتْلُ عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْهُ ذِكْرًا. The rabbis were in Medina, And the Quraysh sent a delegation to find out from them, how can we tell whether this man, Nabi Muhammad ﷺ, is indeed a prophet? The rabbi said, ask him 3 questions, which only a prophet can answer. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sending the answers to the 3 questions. One of the questions was, ask him about the great traveler. Ask him about the great traveler who traveled to the 2 ends of the world. The second question was, ask him about the ruh. The third question, ask him about the young man of old who had a strange story in a cave. In answering the questions, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala repeats the question and then gives the answer. And so you see how it begins, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنْ ذِي الْقَرْنَيْنِ. Question 2, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ. And they question thee about the ruh, the soul. But question 3, no repetition of the question. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنْ. No. Why not? Everything that happens in the Quran happens for a particular purpose. And for those who are observant and who think and ponder, there are lessons to be learned. So with question 1, ask him about the great traveler who traveled to the 2 ends of the earth. And we are told that this traveler is called Zulqarnain, the one who possesses 2 qarns. And qarn can mean a horn, so qarnain will be 2 horns. And qarn could also be an age or an epoch, a time. So qarnain will be 2 ages. So this is a man who is either of 2 horns or impacts upon 2 ages. قُلْ سَأَتْلُ عَلَيْكُم مِّنْهُ ذِكْرًا. I am going to tell you something about him which must be remembered. إِنَّا مَكَّنَّا لَهُ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَآتَيْنَاهُ مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ سَبَبًا. Behold, we established him on earth securely, with the power and with the means, with the capacity and the knowledge and the right means to achieve anything that he might set out to achieve. And so surely a superpower, not an ordinary power, a superpower. فَأَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا. And so he chose the right means now to do what he wanted to do. حتى إذا بلغ مغرب الشمس. He sets out on a journey to the west. And he reaches a place where the sun is setting. And there he found it setting in a body of water that was hamiyah, dark, murky, so visibility in that water will be very shallow. And there he came across a people, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now wants to teach a lesson. Zulqarnain possesses power to do whatever he wants to do. But Zulqarnain also has faith in Allah. When power rests on the foundations of faith, how will power be used? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Zulqarnain, قلنا يا ذا القرنين إما أن تعذب وإما أن تتخذ فيهم حسنا. You have a choice to use your power either to punish or to reward. Treat them nicely. How are you going to use your power? Next verse. Zulnakarnain then responds and says, those who are committing acts of wickedness, zulm, oppression, I will use my power to punish them. And when they return to you, you will also punish them. And so the perpetrators of injustice and oppression and wickedness will be punished both here and there. And so there will be an essential harmony between this world here under and that world above. Okay? But those who are righteous in conduct, I'm going to treat them well and reward them and only give them that which is easy for them to fulfill. And so when power rests on the foundations of faith, power will be used to punish the oppressor, and power will be used to support and to help and to reward those who have faith and who are righteous in conduct. That is what the world could have been if we had followed the Quran. That is what the world could be like if you follow the Quran. Is it possible for us to identify that body of water? If we can, we'll be on the way to locating the geographical location of the area in which we're talking about. We're going to do that in a moment, inshallah. Then Zulkarnain set off on the second journey now, and he's going to the rising of the sun. And when he had traveled to the distance that he could travel, the Quran does not tell us how far it was, he came upon a people, لَمْ نَجْعَلْ مِن دُونِهَا سِتْرًا, a people sometimes the Quran is agonizingly short in expression. Agonizingly. Only 4 or 5 words. That's all that you have. لَمْ نَجْعَلْ لَهُمْ مِن دُونِهَا سِتْرًا. We have not provided for them as a covering other than its covering. Covering from what? Who are they? We have to try to penetrate now and give our own understanding. It appears to us that it is the natural covering that you have from the sunshine. So a people living a primitive way of life. A people living a primitive way of life. When power rests on the foundations of faith, how will power be used when it confronts a people living a primitive way of life? Will they also have human rights, primitive peoples? Or do they have less than rights that others have? Suppose you have a whole basin of oil underneath there, and this oil company has located and discovered this huge basin of oil, billions of barrels of oil underneath there. But above, it's the primitive people living this primitive way of life. Which takes priority? The rights of exploitation of the oil, or the rights of the people to live on this stuff? The false sunrise says the oil is more important. So take the people and ship them to Siberia. People are not important. You can dispense with their rights. power is used to exploit the resources of the earth for our benefit. But not Zulkarnain. كذلك. Even it's only one word. That's all. One word. كذلك. وقد أحطنا بما لديه خبرا. Allah uses one word to respond. كذلك. وقد أحطنا بما لديه خبرا. And Zulkarnain, we understood, Allah understood why he acted in the way that he did. He left them as they were, undisturbed, indicating that the human rights of even the most primitive of all people take precedence over Aramco. The human rights of even the most primitive of all people. And he left them as they were. And then he went on to the third journey, which is verse number 92. They had asked of only 2 journeys to the 2 ends of the earth. But Allah knew that they wanted to know whether Nabi Muhammad ﷺ knew about the 3rd journey. That's why they only ask about 2. And Allah is now giving a 3rd answer. Having given the 1st and the 2nd, He now goes to the actual target of the question, which is the 3rd journey. And it is on the 3rd journey that you come to one of the major signs of Akhiru Zaman, which was the target of the question. They wanted to know whether Nabi Muhammad ﷺ knew about Gog and Magog. And so now he travels in the 3rd direction. إِذَا بَلَغَ بَيْنَ السَّدَّيْنِ. He comes to a place between a pass between 2 mountain ranges. On this side are mountains, on this side are mountains. And in between there is a pass. Can we locate geographically where we're talking about? Is it possible? A pass between 2 mountain ranges. And there he came across a people, لَا يَكَادُونَ يَفْقَهُونَ قَوْلًا. He came across a people whose language he could not understand. Because their language was unique. Their language had no connections with other language in that region. It was a language which was not connected with all the other languages in that region. It was a unique language. We're getting clues along the way, important clues for locating. When they had learned to communicate with each other, then these people spoke to Zulkarnain and said to him, Ya Zulkarnain, O Zulkarnain, Inna Ya'juj wa Ma'juj mufsiduna fil ard. Gog and Magog are committing acts of fasad in our territory. There are many sins that we can commit, but only some of them are called crimes. A sin you punished up there, but a crime you punish here as well. And amongst the crimes, amongst the criminal acts that we can commit, there are gradations of punishment. Like if you steal, cut off your hand. But the punishment that is severest of all is the punishment for fasad. It is not only that which corrupts but also destroys. So societies can collapse. Societies can be destroyed because of fasad, not just individuals or families. And fasad comes in many different forms. For example, Sodom and Gomorrah and their homosexuality. That's fasad. The corruption of agriculture. That's fasad. Many different kinds of fasad described in the Quran. And a good student will want to do some research and write a paper on fasad in the Quran. So Gog and Magog have PhDs in fasad. And so the punishment is the most terrible of all. At the lowest level of punishment is banishment. But at the highest level of punishment, it is cut off the hands and feet on opposite sides and crucify them until death. That's the worst punishment in the Quran. And this is what Gog and Magog do. But in the hadith, Allah speaks about Gog and Magog and He says, I have created creatures of mind so powerful, Sahih Muslim, that none but I can destroy them. So they have almost an indestructible power. And they use their power exactly opposite to Zulqarnain. He uses his power to punish the oppressor. But they use their power to oppress. He uses his power to reward those who are righteous in conduct and treat them nicely. They use their power to wage war on the believers. He uses his power in such a way that shows respect for human rights. Even the human rights of the Aborigines of Australia, the human rights of the American Indian tribes who loved the earth and respected the sky and the rivers and the sea and the trees and the birds far more than the American people would ever do. How do you treat these people? He respected their human rights and left them as they were, but not Gog and Magog. Today the American Indians and the Canadian Indians are in prison, and they're drinking alcohol, and they're wearing blue jeans and eating McDonald's hamburgers. That's where they are today, from what they were before. O Zulqarnain, can you help us? You have the power. Can you build a barrier to protect us from these people? He should have said, I don't need to build any barrier. I'll move in there and I'll beat them up, and they won't touch you anymore. Huh? Like if a Muslim woman is walking on the street of Brooklyn, nobody dares to molest her. Oh no, not a Muslim woman. Not in Brooklyn, not in Harlem, not in the Bronx. Because you make the mistake of molesting a Muslim woman, all the men will be on you like tigers. And they'll teach you a lesson you'll never forget. So I don't need to build any barrier, I'll go and teach them a lesson they'll never forget. But no, he didn't say that. They said, we're prepared to pay you. He said, I don't need your money. What Allah has given to me is more valuable. He recognized that even though he had this power, his power was not enough to be able to go and teach them a lesson. So he agreed to build a barrier, recognizing that their power was so great that even he could not defeat them. What I need from you is your labor. Help me with your manpower. And I'm going to build a barrier between you. Now number 96, verse number 96. Bring me blocks of iron. And so that has to be a geographical location where there's iron ore. It has to be a geographical location where there are mountain ranges and a pass between the mountain ranges. It has to be a geographical location where on the left you have a body of water which is so dark and murky that visibility is very shallow, okay? And it has to be an area where there are large deposits of iron ore. Bring me blocks of iron. And after he had covered the pass with blocks of iron, he said, build a furnace, blow with your bellows, and now bring me molten copper. So he poured the molten copper, and the engineers, we have an engineer here, tells me that this is to prevent rust. And after he had built the barrier and covered it, the Quran speaks, it changes from the word saddain to use another word, sadafain, in verse number 95. آتوني زبر الحديد حتى إذا ساوى بين الصدفين. Previously the word used was saddain, but now the word used is sadafain. Saddain is two barriers, two mountain ranges, but sadafain is something else. It is like the two sides of a shell. We're going to have some pictures of this now. The two sides of a shell. You've been to the seashore. When you open a shell like this, it will join at the bottom, but open at the top. That's the shape of the pass between the mountains. Join at the bottom, open at the top. So when he had blocked off this space, this sadafain, now the molten copper is put on it, and then he says, هذا رحمة من ربي. Gog and Magog could neither scale the barrier nor could they penetrate it, so they are now trapped behind the barrier. And so Zulkarnain now says, هذا رحمة من ربي. This barrier is constructed in consequence of Allah's kindness and grace. فَإِذَا جَاءَ وَعْدُ رَبِّي. But when that time comes of which my Lord has warned, إِذَا فُتِحَتْ, they will not return to reclaim the town as their own until إِذَا فُتِحَتْ, until Gog and Magog are released. When that time comes for Gog and Magog to be released, so that Banu Israel are to be brought back to the Holy Land, جِئْنَا بِكُمْ لَفِيفًا, brought back as a motley crowd. At that time, جَعَلَهُ دَكَّا, Allah is going to bring down this barrier and it become dust. Would Alexander, the Greek general who worshipped Zeus and Mars and Venus, Venus was a goddess, instead of Allah, would he speak like this? And yet you have so many people saying Zulkarnain was Alexander, or Zulkarnain was some Zoroastrian who was an emperor of Persia. Zulkarnain has to be someone who worships Allah, the one God. When that time comes of which my Lord has warned, He's going to cause this barrier to collapse, to become ruins. And then at that time, وَتَرَكْنَا بَعْدَهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ يَمُوجُ فِي بَعْضٍ. Allah will then cause Gog and Magog, it seems, to surge against each other like waves crashing against each other. Or Allah will cause mankind to enter into an age of universal anarchy, with people surging against each other, clashing with each other all over the earth. وَتَرَكْنَا بَعْدَهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ يَمُوجُ فِي بَعْضٍ. And when you see these things happening on the face of the earth, you know the trumpet is coming. وَنُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ فَجَمَعْنَاهُمْ جَمْعًا. وَعَرَضْنَا جَهَنَّمَ يَوْمَئِذٍ لِلْكَافِرِينَ عَرْضًا. And on that day we shall place hell for all to see. In other words, this world is going to become a living hell before the eyes of those who deny the truth. الَّذِينَ كَانَتْ أَعْيُنُهُمْ فِي غِطَاءٍ عَنْ ذِكْرِي وَكَانُوا لَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ السَّمْعَ. They are those whose eyes have been veiled against any remembrance of Allah. They could not bear to listen to the voice of truth. And then finally, this verse has to be included in the passage. أَفَحَسِبَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَن يَتَّخِذُوا عِبَادِي مِن دُونِي أَوْلِيَاءَ إِنَّا أَعْتَدْنَا جَهَنَّمَ لِلْكَافِرِينَ نُزُلًا. Do they who reject the truth, do they perchance believe that they would succeed in embracing my true servants who worship me to become their awliya, their friends and their allies, while excluding me? And thus to trap them in the world which will become a living hell. Verily we have readied hell, Jahannam, to welcome all those who deny the truth. This is the passage of the Quran that introduces the subject of Gog and Magog. Now let's turn to the pictures and see whether we can locate. This is the Caucasus Mountains here, the white being the snow. And on the left side there is a body of water which is so dark and so murky with so much algae in it that it has been given a name. And that name has been there with it for many, many, many years. Even the time of Ibn Kathir. It's called the Black Sea. It's called the Black Sea. Why? Because it is so dark. If you go to the Mediterranean Sea and you're on a ship, you could see several meters underneath the water. But if you go to the Black Sea, you'd hardly be able to see more than 1 meter underneath the water. Ibn Kathir recognizes this to be the sea mentioned in the Quran as Hamiyah. On this side of the Black Sea is the Caspian Sea. And in between the Caspian and the Black Sea is this body of land. So we say that Zulkarnain is traveling in that direction to the west, and then in this direction to the east. And incidentally, the Caspian Sea was destined to hold a huge basin of oil. A huge basin of oil underneath the Caspian Sea. The Caucasus Mountains are an unbroken range of mountains from that end to this end. But in between the Caucasus Mountains, there is one pass, only one, in between. It's called the Dariel Gorge. Let's see if we have photographs of that. Here we are, the Caspian Sea, you can see it here. The Black Sea out there, that's Turkey. This is Syria, this is Iraq, this is Iran. And further south is the Holy Land. Next. Here's a better photograph of the Caucasus Mountains, Black Sea, Caspian Sea next. the Black Sea. You could see how black it is. And I have this photograph in my book, Gog and Magog. The Russian fleet, nuclear-powered Russian fleet, is over here. Over here. So, when Gog and Magog are released, says the Hadith, the first of them will pass by the Sea of Galilee. That's where the Sea of Galilee is, north of Jerusalem. The Sea of Galilee is north of Jerusalem. And Gog and Magog are heading for Jerusalem. The word Jerusalem does not occur in the Hadith. It's the word Baitul Maqdis. So Gog and Magog are going to come down. The word Baitul Maqdis is actually there in the Hadith. Gog and Magog are going to come down to Baitul Maqdis. And in the process of going to Baitul Maqdis, they're going to pass by the Sea of Galilee. So they're coming from the north. They're coming from here. Alright? So Zulkarnain travels this way and then this way. And in between is the passage. See if you can find that. The passageway between. Here we are. There is the gorge, and there's one side, and there's the other side. And it's like an open shell. See, the Quran is describing this Sadafain. There they are again, the Sadafain. Go ahead. Oh, terrible. An open shell. No, this is better than the one I have in my book. The one in my book is really ugly. An open shell. So we see the two sides of the shell there. Alright? So previously the Quran had used the word Sadain, but now it uses the word Sadafain. The two sides of an open shell like that. Go ahead. Better. There you are. The two sides of an open shell. There you are, and that's the gorge in between. Go ahead. Okay, Black Sea, Caspian Sea. Yeah, go ahead. See, we have some more. One of the major events of Akhirul Zaman is the conquest of Constantinople. And there's Constantinople. Mustafa Kamal insists that the name is Istanbul, and if you use the name Constantinople, you can be arrested. And the Turkish post office will not accept any mail with the name Constantinople, because he wants us to believe, and the Ottoman Islamic Empire wants us to believe, that the conquest of Constantinople prophesied by Nabi Muhammad already occurred in 1453. Wrong. The conquest of Constantinople is still to occur. And the reason why the conquest of Constantinople takes place after the Malhama, and maybe in the fourth session we can deal with Malhama. The conquest of Constantinople is important. Why? Because Eastern Christianity did not form an alliance with the Jews. Western Christianity did. Eastern Christianity is Rome of the Quran. And Nabi Muhammad ﷺ said that we Muslims are going to form an alliance with Rome. That alliance is important because the major force that faces Israel, the major threat to Israel, comes from Russia. The Russian nuclear-powered navy is here. Russia's navy cannot use this area over here in the winter time because it's all snow and ice. So for the Russian navy to get into the Mediterranean, this is the path. And NATO controls Istanbul, Constantinople, on behalf of the Anglo-American Zionist Alliance. And before NATO, it was the Ottoman Empire that controlled this on behalf of Britain and France. And it was the Ottoman Empire which was waging holy war on Eastern Christianity, on behalf of Western Christianity. And so the conquest of Constantinople has to take place so that the Russian fleet can get out of the Black Sea and come here. So we have, I believe, established for you the geographical location of Gog and Magog. A people who are located behind the barrier. Behind the barrier, on that side of the Caucasus, were the Khazar, a tribe of people who converted and became Jews. Must have been on a Sunday morning. And some of them converted from Judaism and became Christians. Must have been on a Sunday evening. So you have Khazar who are Jews, and you have Khazar who are Christians. But they did not become Jews because of religious conviction. They became Jews as a matter of political convenience. So they don't particularly care for Torah and for the laws of diet and so on. So these are people who are Jews as a nation, but not as a religion. Huh? A nation, not a religion. These are the people who today control power in the world. Now I have to make a confession. In this book, I came to the conclusion that Gog and Magog are the two rival powers in the world today. The Russian-led alliance I identified as Magog, and the Anglo-American alliance I recognize as Gog. I think that is now inadequate. Rather, a more accurate analysis would be that Gog and Magog are located within both the superpowers. And Gog and Magog are taking both the superpowers to their destruction. Because when the two superpowers have already been used to serve Israel and to serve the Zionists, they don't need them anymore. And so when the two superpowers are taken on a ride until they clash with each other, with the nuclear war, there will be mutual destruction. They will be destroyed, but not Gog and Magog. That's where I made my mistake. Gog and Magog will not be destroyed by the Malhama. Gog and Magog will still survive the Malhama. And Gog and Magog are now going to use their power to ensure that Israel rules the world. And it is only when Nabi Isa alayhi salam returns, which is long after the Malhama, only then will Gog and Magog be destroyed. So when you read this book, I'm going to have to put in an extra paragraph or so now to give this additional explanation. Now, The Prophet ﷺ also spoke about Dajjal, that Allah had created a being and programmed that being to impersonate the true Messiah. They rejected him, the true Messiah, and they're waiting for the true Messiah to come. And so Allah is going to send into the world someone who will impersonate the true Messiah. And he is Dajjal. He will appear as a human being. He will appear as a Jew, as a young man who will be powerfully built. And I used to say who would have curly hair. Until an Egyptian came, he explained to me, he says, no, Sheikh, the Orthodox Jews have to wear curls at their side here. And that is what the Prophet is speaking about. And you see them in Brooklyn with the curls at the side, okay? So he would be a human being. He would appear rather as a human being. As a young man, powerfully built, a Jew with curls. And he's going to stand up in Jerusalem. I don't say he's going to appear in Jerusalem. He could appear somewhere else, but he will stand up in Jerusalem and declare, I am the Messiah. And all those who had eyes and couldn't see would recognize him as the Messiah. He would have deceived them. His name is Dajjal because he deceives. He has a PhD in deception. In order for him to successfully impersonate the Messiah, he's got to rule the world. He's got to establish his power as the supreme power in the world. When he has done that, he has to rule the world from the Holy Land. Only then he can declare, I am the Messiah. A convenient earthquake will have to take place, which will bring down Masjid al-Aqsa, and they have the power to do convenient earthquakes. And then he has to rebuild the temple. And then he declares, I am the Messiah, and they'll accept him as the Messiah. But he would not be the Messiah, he would be Dajjal. In this book, I have explained, and this is not a hadith, it's a logical deduction. In order for him to successfully impersonate the Messiah, number one, he'll have to liberate the Holy Land, which is under control of Muslims. Liberate it for the Jews, that is. He's already done that. He's already done that. Number two, he'll have to bring the Jews back to the Holy Land to reclaim it as their own. He's already done that. Number three, he'll have to restore a state of Israel in the Holy Land and get them to believe that this is Holy Israel when it's an impostor. He's already done that. Number four, he'll have to cause that Israel to become the ruling state in the world. Israel may already be ruling the world today, but it's doing it from behind the hijab. But in order for Israel to be recognized as the ruling state, the hijab has to be moved. Israel cannot rule the world while the United States is the ruling power. In this book, I have analyzed a hadith that when Dajjal is released, he live on earth for 40 days, a day like a year, a day like a month, a day like a week, etc. And I have come to the conclusion that in a day like a year, which was stage one, he caused Britain to become the ruling state in the world. In a day which is like a year, in stage one, Dajjal caused the island of Britain to become the ruling state in the world. And so the world experienced Pax Britannica. I'm choosing my words very carefully. So you don't say to me that the day like a year began on such and such a day. And then start mathematical calculations for me. No, I don't want you to do that. So the world experienced Pax Britannica. If you have another explanation for the emergence of Pax Britannica, do please let me know. This is my explanation. And then a day like a month succeeded a day like a year, and Pax Britannica had to give way to Pax Americana. And the United States became the next ruling state in the world, with a mysterious relationship with the Holy Land and with Israel. And my explanation is that this is Dajjal in stage number 2. If you have a better explanation, I'd love to hear it. But there's such a profound silence from the world of Islamic scholarship, and such a profound and embarrassing silence from Islamic movements, many of which now form governments in the world. They don't want to hear the subject. It's too inconvenient for them. And such a profound and embarrassing silence from scholars who otherwise are recognized as great scholars. But if the Quran explains all things, what is the explanation for Pax Britannica? What is the explanation for Pax Americana? How is it that Imran Hussein, who is not an economist, who is not a monetary economist, no, who studied economics and studied monetary economics as part of his studies in international relations, that doesn't make you an expert. How is it that Imran Hussein 15 years ago or more was able to declare publicly and put it down in writing that the US dollar must collapse? I didn't say that the US dollar will collapse. I said more than that. I said the US dollar must collapse. The monetary system must collapse. And it must give way to another monetary system. 15 years ago I was talking about a new monetary system of cashless money. You can't see it, you can't touch it. Electronic money. Today we are on the doorstep of the collapse of the US dollar. Where did I get the knowledge from? Was it a jinn whispering in my ear? Was it an angel whispering in the other ear? When will they wake up? This is not whisperings in my ear. This is scholarship. This is the application of a methodology to the sustained study of Akhir Zaman. That's where I got it from. And so as you study the subject of Dajjal, you'll understand political history, and you'll understand economic history, and you'll understand how to respond. I'm only introducing the response now. In the next session, we'll speak more about the response. Dajjal is about to move to a day which is like a week. And in that day which is like a week, Israel has to take over from the United States as the next ruling state in the world. And they ask me, how can little Israel rule the world? And I say to them, you dumb. Is there any American politician in the ruling state in the world today who has any kind of a hope to win an election if he stands up against Israel? You dumb. Israel controls the United States of America. And the President of Israel, or the Prime Minister, Ariel Sharon, he said that. We control the United States. He said it publicly. So it's not little Israel. It is the Zionist movement, it's the Anglo-American alliance, which is now a Zionist alliance. It is Gog and Magog. They are the ones who control power in the world, and they are delivering to Israel the status of ruling state in the world. In order for Israel to rule the world, it has to rule over the Arabs. And so you had the first Arab Spring 100 years ago. You've got to study history. This is not the first Arab Spring. The first Arab Spring was 100 years ago. And that first Arab Spring eased out the Ottoman Empire and brought into being client states that were overtly client states. Saudi Arabia, who will now control the heartland of Islam on behalf of the Zionists. It brought into being governments and rulers who now acted on behalf of the Zionists. The second Arab Spring is doing the same thing. The biggest obstacle in the way is Syria. And the most important plum in the whole basket is Syria. Is Syria. And in order for them to rule the world, they got to rule over the Arabs. To rule over the Arabs, you have to decimate the Arabs. You can't have so many Arabs, there are too many Arabs. And so, وَيْلٌ لِلْعَرَبِ مِنْ شَرٍ قَدْ اقْتَرَبَ, said Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Woe unto the Arabs, because of a great evil which is going to come upon them. It's close, Gog and Magog. And he prophesied that the Arabs are going to be wiped out by plague. So biological warfare. The Arab Spring is meant to lead to the Arab slaughter. So you have a manageable Arab population in the world. And when the attack on the Arabs takes place, the biological one, the only place where you can find safety is in Mecca and Medina. Because neither Dajjal nor plague can enter into Mecca and Medina. When Israel rules the world, it will be for a day which is like a week, a short period of time. And that will be the time of the most intense oppression for Muslims. At the end of that day, which is like a week, we're going to experience the emergence of Dajjal in person. But before Dajjal can appear in person, two things must occur. Before Dajjal can appear in person, two things must occur. Number one, the Malhama, or the Great War, which will make the First World War and the Second World War look like a fight over peanuts. So great will that war be. And after that, what's the next one? What comes after the Malhama? The conquest of Constantinople. And after the conquest of Constantinople, then comes the Khuruj of Dajjal. Dajjal was released in the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ. وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكَ لَيَبْعَثَنَّ عَلَيْهِمْ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ مَنْ يَسُومُهُمْ سُوءَ الْعَذَابِ. Gog and Magog were released at that time. Dajjal was released at that time. But Dajjal is not in our world of space and time. But now, after the conquest of Constantinople, Dajjal will have his Khuruj. So you're going to see him in person, Mr. Dajjal himself. At that time, Medina will be attacked. Dajjal is going to land outside of Medina, in salty, marshy land outside of Medina. Meaning the Israeli armed forces are going to attack Medina. And at that time, Medina is going to shake 3 times. And every kafir and every munafiq will be thrown out. So they're going to be kuffar in Medina and munafiqun. And they're going to join Dajjal. And the angels are going to bar Dajjal from entering Medina and divert his attack to Damascus. And when Dajjal reaches Damascus, then the three main actors of Akhir Zaman will all be together in the same geographical location. Number one, Dajjal, followed by 70,000 Jews from Isfahan wearing their Persian shawls, as the hadith. Number two, someone whose name I have not mentioned so far, Imam al-Mahdi. But I do have several lectures on the topic, and we have them right here. Imam al-Mahdi. And he will be inside the masjid, and Dajjal will be outside. The time of Salat. The first time the Messiah came, Allah appointed someone to positively identify the Messiah. Who was he? John the Baptist. The second time that the Messiah comes, Allah appoints someone to positively identify him. Who is he? Imam al-Mahdi. John the Baptist said, here he is, there's the man you've been waiting for, this is the Messiah. Pointing to his cousin, Nabi Isa alayhi salam. Imam al-Mahdi is about to lead the Salat when Dajjal comes, Nabi Isa alayhi salam comes down from the sky with his hands resting on the wings of two angels. And as he comes down in the masjid, the Imam will say, this is the son of Mary. This is Nabi Isa alayhi salam. History repeats itself, positive identification. And then the Imam will invite him to lead the Salah. I say, no, you've been appointed by the Jama'ah, you lead the Salah. And he will pray with us in accordance with the Sharia, which came to Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. It is after the Salat is over that he say, open the gates, because the masjid is barricaded. And Dajjal is outside. And Imam al-Mahdi is inside. And Nabi Isa alayhi salam is inside. The three main actors of Akhir Zaman in one place. Damascus. So the story of Damascus is not going to end with some foreign armed and foreign finance people overtaking the country on behalf of the Zionists. The story of Damascus will end only on that day. As he opens the gate and Dajjal sees him, Dajjal is going to melt like salt melts in water. And he's going to flee. Running. Today they're stamping their feet on the earth as bloody oppressors. But tomorrow they're going to be running. Yes, tomorrow they're going to be running. So good news for Gaza, hold on. Tomorrow they're going to be running. And Nabi Isa alayhi salam will pursue him and overtake him in a place called Lud and kill him. It is my opinion that when he is killed, he's going to pass into non-existence. Because he was programmed to act as he did. So he doesn't have to stand before Allah for judgment and to answer for his conduct and to be rewarded or to be punished. No, because Allah created him as a special creation. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ مِنْ شَرِّ مَا خَلَقَ. An evil creation to test mankind and to punish mankind. How do we respond to the awesome facade of Gog and Magog? And how do we respond to the oppression of Dajjal? My answer is, you can't beat them. This is a sinking ship. They're taking all of mankind down with it. And if you're on board a sinking ship, and you know it is sinking, and you cannot prevent it from sinking, what do? Do you collect money and build $1 million masjid? Huh? No. If you're on board a ship and it's sinking, and all those who go down with that ship are going into the hellfire, you can't prevent it from sinking, then the only thing that a sensible, intelligent person would do is to get off that ship. And that's what the young man did in Surah Al-Kahf. It is a philosophy of withdrawal from a godless world to preserve faith. Let us end now with the hadith. The Prophet said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, there are some who would have difficulties with the Prophet, you know. Why did he say this? Why can't we be a part of mainstream society? What's wrong with the blue jeans Jamaat? So why did he say it? But this is what he said. He said the time would come when a believer, in order to preserve faith, would have to flee to the mountainsides where rain falls and take with him some sheep and goats, which means withdrawal from the godless world to preserve faith. This is our response. Those who choose to remain in the cities, you must know that every city and every town is going to be destroyed. Surah Al-Isra. And those which are not destroyed are going to be punished with terrible punishment. We say withdraw to the remote countryside and build small communities of people who worship Allah with sincerity in their hearts. And we call that the Muslim village. The Muslim village will unite our people. So no sectarianism. No. The Quran and the Sunnah will unite our people. I have much more to say on the subject, but that will be in the next session, inshallah. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. الله فهب لي توبة واغفر ذنوبي فإنك غافر الذنب العظيم. إلهي لست للفردوس أهلا ولا أقوى على نار الجحيم. الله فهب لي توبة واغفر ذنوبي فإنك غافر الذنب العظيم. Tuhanku, aku tidak layak untuk syurgamu, tetapi aku tidak pula sanggup menanggung siksa nerakamu. Dari itu kurniakanlah ampunan kepadaku, ampunkanlah dosaku. Sesungguhnya Engkaulah pengampun dosa-dosa besar. Tuhanku, aku tidak layak untuk syurgamu, tetapi aku tidak pula sanggup menanggung siksa nerakamu. Dari itu kurniakanlah ampunan kepadaku, ampunkanlah dosaku. Sesungguhnya Engkaulah pengampun dosa-dosa besar. Ilahi lastu lil firdausi a'la wala aqwa ala naril jahim. Allah
الله فهب لي توبة